Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling on it.
The dad joke. Corny, groan-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
What did the buffalo say when he dropped his son off for school? Bye, son.
So take a moment to make your kid laugh, because dad jokes rule. Make your kid laugh today. Go to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Cipriano, a boom! Friday night in Columbus, Ohio, and they're packed up to the rafters, standing room only, to watch the Chill, a minor league hockey team 2 steps below the big time.
It may be minor league compared to what someone else has, but it's major league to us, and we love them.
Program! 6 months ago, there was nothing here. Professional hockey had failed 3 times in Columbus. Then came the big sell. They went to the people with an aggressive advertising campaign stressing mayhem as entertainment.
The one thing you think of when you think of Friday the 13th is the real cheesy movies with the axe murder and the hockey mask. So
this approach that we use, it may not be traditional, but it's very effective, and it's not, I don't consider it in any way offensive, so it's just, it's good marketing.
It's marketing that sometimes might offend some other people. It would offend a hockey purist, but it works.
It surely does. And besides hockey, here's what you get for your $9. The national anthem played on a tenor saxophone. A beach ball to play with. Puck shooting contests. Sometimes frozen chickens are substituted for the puck. Free pizzas if you can catch one. And between period shows that the night we were there included something called ice polo.
It's fun to work in hockey. Hockey fans make it fun, too. The participation of the people that go to our games, they're crazy.
Seems like the audience gets involved with it. It's not a bunch of old fuddy-duddy sitting around. Go team!
During games, the front office people from the president on down work the crowd like a posse of politicians pushing the product. Wild and crazy guys hiding in business suits.
And we're all relatively young, and we all grew up on, David Letterman and Saturday Night Live, and we sit around and quote Caddyshack movie lines all the time. So, we all are kind of all on the same wavelength.
And apparently on the same wavelength as their fans. Attendance averages about 5,000 a game, double their expectations. The Chill is hot.
It's not work. Oh, it's not work. It's not work. This shouldn't work.
This is to have 6,400 people smiling and having a great time. Makes the work worth it. I mean, there's nothing more to be said.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
All right, let's buckle up for safety, everybody. How you doing? My name is Tim Hanlon, and this is Good Seats Still Available, the curious little podcast that we like to do for you each and every week. And it's devoted to what used to be in professional sports. We try to go to great lengths to find great stories for you, and this week is no exception. And of course, we don't spend a whole lot of time on minor league teams, because Lord knows there's plenty of top-tier major league franchises and circuits out there, and that have come and gone, and just there's a whole just gigantic pile of those that we have yet to get to. But we do make an exception every once in a while for stories that have some connection to the pro ranks, the top tier pro ranks. And this is a case in point this week. Our conversation this week is around, as you heard in that clip from the late great Ray Gandolf of then at the time ABC Sports, but longtime CBS News prior to that. His little story from early in January, actually, 1992, about the team that we're going to talk about this week, the Columbus Chill of the then East Coast Hockey League, the ECHL. With our guests this week, David Paitson and Craig Merz, instrumental in the founding and the telling of this story. The ECHL as a league and the Columbus Chill in particular as a team, trying to break through the relative dearth, if you will, of professional sports in Columbus, Ohio. Prior to the 1990s, the only real professional sports team of any note in Columbus, aside from a little dalliance here and there with the horizon of the Continental Basketball Association and the Columbus Clippers, of course, of the AAA baseball setup there, the franchise long time with related to or affiliated with the New York Yankees, is kind of bereft. Minor league hockey existed in the late 60s in Columbus with the long ago Columbus Checkers, and in the 70s, two teams, the Golden Seals and then the Owls from 73 to 77. But other than that, that was pretty much it. And David Paitson, one of our guests this week, who was the general manager of the very successful minor league Indianapolis Ice, was part of a process to expand in the ECHL with sports entrepreneur Horn Chen out of Chicago. He himself quite a prolific investor in minor league sports to bring hockey. Originally, maybe the idea was to bring it to Cleveland with this ECHL, but no, Columbus sort of hit the radar. A little less competitive, maybe a little bit more fertile opportunity. But boy, oh boy, that Ohio State sports thing, it's really difficult to break through that, right? I mean, Ohio State football is basically a borderline religion. The horseshoe and it just dominates sports culture, the Buckeyes do. Certainly the college basketball team at Ohio State certainly has really made great strides over the last couple of decades and was certainly doing so in the 90s as well. And frankly, just athletics generally in Ohio State it's basically synonymous. So, to be a brand new pro sports franchise, even of a minor league variety, I mean, good luck, I guess, is the sort of exhortation and the greeting that one receives when arriving into town, I guess. But boy, oh boy, this team certainly did stick out, as you heard in that clip. They really figured out that they had not only a market, that is young college students and young professionals having perhaps recently graduated, just ready-made for some kind of excitement in the cold winter months that maybe Ohio State was not providing or just otherwise, and not a whole lot of competition, frankly, for sports or the entertainment dollar. And they really went out of their way to kind of set themselves apart, right? With wacky promotions. I mean, there's pizza involved. There's frozen Cornish game hens as part of that mix. You have various large, shall we say, ladies singing national anthems involved and all kinds of other hijinks. And it became an event for sure in Columbus, up at the old Ohio Expo Center Coliseum, up at the Fairgrounds there, now known as the Taft Coliseum. It's still around. But boy, oh boy, that place was rocking with the Columbus chill. And the chief instigators of that story, David Paitson, the general manager of that team, the guy who kind of put it all together, and Craig Merz, the longtime sports writer at the Columbus Dispatch, they're our guests this week, and they, of course, have written the definitive story of the chill called Chill Factor, how a minor league hockey team changed the city forever. It's the story of the 1990s Columbus Chill. It's available in a hardcover. It came out in 2015, but it'll also be available. It's now available actually now for pre-order in an updated paperback version. You'll find a link to it on our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com. Just search up this episode 169, and you can conveniently find a link to either the current or pre-order the future version of said book. But we're going to get into and give you a taste of it this week with our chat coming up with Dave and Craig. And it's fun-filled. It's intriguing. It's a real taste of minor league hockey, Columbus, and sports. Look, if you're a Columbus Blue Jackets fan, you need to know the story about this Columbus Chill franchise. Although it doesn't seem any direct relationship, it is absolutely foundational to why the Blue Jackets are there in the first place. The arena, for God's sakes, Nationwide Arena, it wouldn't be there without the chill, right? Hockey as a culture, wouldn't have come in NHL flavor in the late 90s, early 2000s without the chill laying the base in the 90s. All of that story of the Columbus Blue Jackets is absolutely related, directly or indirectly. It doesn't really matter how you kind of sort of frame it. It is absolutely part of the legacy that was founded by the Columbus Chill, the late, great Columbus Chill. And we get into that conversation in just a few moments' time with Dave and Craig coming up in a moment or two. First, a little promotional stuff. Let's get that out of the way, shall we? We don't want to get out of the way. We want to celebrate. We want to celebrate our friends at Streaker Sports. StreakerSports.com. That's their website, and they are the purveyor of sports culture. And they overindulge in not only just great sports culture stuff from all different corners of the sporting landscape, but the area that we love to celebrate especially is their deep and prodigious collection of shirts from just all kinds of great defunct leagues that are no longer with us, but live on in our memories. And why not celebrate those memories in beautiful T-shirt form? And we're talking the highest quality stuff out there from our friends at Streaker Sports. You love the ABA? How about the World Hockey Association? You remember the WFL or the USFL? These are things that we love on this show. Roller Hockey International. How about Pro Beach Hockey? Also part of the sort of indoor/outdoor roller hockey craze. The Major Indoor Lacrosse League. Remember that? That's sort of the precursor of today's NLL. The world, we said the world. No, the Western Hockey League. That was the sort of the impetus for the NHL expanding in the late 60s. Or the North American Soccer League, perhaps one of our favorites. Yeah, of course. But we also want to celebrate their newest collection. It's the IHL, the International Hockey League. Remember the Indianapolis Ice that I just mentioned? David Paitson's team. Well, they're commemorated in a 1996 Indianapolis Ice T-shirt that you can find on StreakerSports.com. You like the IHL league itself? Well, there's a great shirt devoted to it there, or perhaps one of the scores of teams from that league. The Manitoba Moose. Do you remember the San Francisco Spiders? Maybe the Peoria Rivermen or the San Diego Gulls, perhaps. The Flint Generals are commemorated in T-shirt form. The Fort Wayne Comets on WOWO in Fort Wayne, Indiana. The Cleveland Lumberjacks. Oh, yes. How about the Albany Choppers? And the Houston Aeros and the Chicago Wolves are still around, actually, today. All of those shirts and those teams and more. The Cincinnati Cyclones, can't forget them. All of them in great T-shirt form and wonderful colors. You can find all of those shirts and then some at StreakerSports.com. And of course, we've got a promo code for you. We would not leave you hanging. How about 10% off all of your purchases? Yeah, why not? Use the promo code GOODSEATS and 10% off of your purchases is yours, courtesy of us and our friends at Streaker Sports. Again, promo code GOODSEATS at StreakerSports.com. And again, it's 10% off all of your purchases. Thank you to Streaker Sports, the purveyor of sports culture. And we thank you for checking them out, giving them a purchase, hopefully giving us a few shekels of love while you do so. And of course, we appreciate you not only doing that, but listening to our fun conversation coming up. Here it comes. Let's talk Columbus Chill hockey, shall we? It's the 1990s. It's Columbus, Ohio. And it's our friends Dave Paitson and Craig Merz. Here's our chat. Please, as always, enjoy. Craig, why don't you set up a little bit of how you sort of discovered this Columbus Chill story. You're a journalist by trade, a sports writer, yeah?
Yes, began at the Columbus Dispatch in 1981, almost said 91. I am really old. And out of Otterbein now University, got to give a plug there. And in May of 1991, I was working part-time in the sports, or part sports, part, Dispatch city beat reporter. And I saw a blurb in the Hockey News, which I subscribed to, about a team maybe trying to come to Columbus, Ohio in the East Coast Hockey League. And as probably being the only person in the entire paper knew anything about hockey, I jumped right on it and was able to follow that. And eventually that led to me just becoming full-time in the sports. And my beat was the Columbus Chill for the most part.
Interesting. And David, you were the guy who put the ad in the Hockey News, maybe?
Well, they found out about it. I'm not sure we had put it out there, but they have, those reporters have a way of finding things out. So
we're a tricky bunch.
You're a tricky bunch, that's for sure. It certainly started to make its way out there, but I don't think a lot of people were paying attention to those early stories either, because there have been a lot of a lot of teams that come and go in Columbus, not just hockey, but a lot of different franchises. So it was, another try. I think a lot of people probably saw it initially and saw ho hum, okay, this one will come and how long will it last?
So we're talking about the East Coast Hockey League, right? Which is maybe you could describe for our audience, both of you, where the ECHL, what is now known as the ECHL, was sort of set in the hierarchy of minor league and or major league hockey.
Yeah, at the time, we ended up being the 16th franchise of the East Coast League. In fact, that was going to be the capping point. That was one of the sales points to our owner. Of course, they blew that up the next time somebody offered expansion money, But the league at the time is, AA level, but I think the league was a far cry from where it was at. Even by the time we got to the end of our time, which is only 8 years with the chill. And today, the league is really a great developmental league. But early on, it was a little more Wild West kind of feel. But they had put in some really good pieces to make it work. A certain amount of Americans on the roster for that development. Salary caps only can play only a certain amount of players. I think even just one or two could go past 3 years in their professional career. So they really did not want it to become that old senior beer league that would, where somebody would just hang around for 10 or 12 years. They really wanted to turn the players over.
Yeah, and it was, as the name said, it was really sort of the East Coast League to start with, at least Eastern U.S. with, Richmond, Norfolk, Virginia, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Erie, Pennsylvania. And the year before the chill started, Cincinnati came into the league. Then the same season as the chill, you had the Dayton Bombers, Toledo Storm. So at that point, it was really expanding, but really not a lot of people knew about that league. Columbus has had some previous hockey ventures in the IHL with the Columbus Checkers, the Columbus Golden Seals, and then the Owls, who left Columbus in 1977. So there really was a 14-year gap without pro hockey in Columbus until the chill came in 1991.
Okay, so that's interesting, and that sort of leads me into another question. So you're basically saying there was some level of minor league hockey history, shall we say, in Columbus, but somewhat not unlike the name of the first franchise, a checkered, pun intended, history
Yes.
that was largely the late 60s and the bulk of the 1970s, but really nothing since that last Columbus Owls season in 77. Why, I guess, a question maybe for both of you, Craig Morris, I guess, a fan at the time and then sort of growing into a sports writer, and David more from, being part of the management that ultimately chose Columbus. Why Columbus, given that somewhat shaky and frankly, at the time, maybe 10 plus years absent hockey history?
Well, it's a great city, first of all. And I think that it was the city just even taking a look. It was only 3 hours from us in Indianapolis, which I was at before. And started to look around once the Cleveland situation wasn't going to pan out, at cities that fit in the footprint, that were large enough to handle it and so forth, and really kept coming back to Columbus. And I'm like, why are there not more teams here? And he really looked at it, and it was very much facility related. The town itself was large enough to handle it. It was a younger, more vibrant community, great, corporate businesses there, a huge college with Ohio State, plus many other, like the 6 other small colleges in the area. So from a marketer standpoint, it was, and a business standpoint, it looked at that and said that's got to be right for an opportunity. There were 2 things to overcome, though. One was, breaking through whatsoever in the shadow of Ohio State, which was vast. It's a very, that's a very big thing to get by because of the media attention that they pull. So you had to find your way to squeeze into that. And the other was facilities, which were not, there were not great choices. There's really only 2. We looked downtown initially. Was pretty quick to decide that wasn't going to work. There was a small arena, but really meant more for basketball than it was hockey, attached to the convention center. And then the Fairgrounds Coliseum, which I think Craig can describe well, really had seen its day for the most part. Built in 1917, I think it was the oldest existing hockey venue in the United States. That's what we wanted to do.
But it was a true barn, and it was on the Fairgrounds Coliseum, and it was used for horse shows and everything. So actually, it was a true barn. But Tim, you go back to why Columbus or why not Columbus for all those years. I think by the early 90s, especially by 91 or so, Columbus was changing it. The demographics. Yes, Ohio State was big and major, but people were coming to Columbus. It was a growing city, and there were people in town who did not have an allegiance to Ohio State. And some of them were hockey fans, and they were probably following the Pittsburgh Penguins or the Detroit Red Wings if they had come to Columbus from the region. So there was a growing interest. Ohio State had a hockey team that played at the OSU ice rink, which seated about 1,200 people and was built in 1964. So that was, outdated and not very useful at all. But there was a little bit of core of people who wanted hockey and wanted something different than Ohio State. Not that they didn't like Ohio State maybe, but they wanted something different, especially for the winter months.
Well, Craig, give me a sense before we sort of delve more deeply into this Chill story. Maybe also a little bit of a halo of Columbus as a quote-unquote professional sports town, right? Not a whole lot aside from that minor league thing. Obviously, the old American Soccer League, the Columbus Magic, the Columbus Clippers, of course, in minor league baseball. But really, I guess, and the hockey franchises that you're mentioning, was there really much else in the way of, if you will, pro sports to act as even a small barometer of potential success?
Well, they had the Columbus Horizon of the Continental Basketball Association, the CBA, who were actually in town and shared the Coliseum the first year with the Chill. So they were in town. Hey, I'm surprised you remember the Magic. That was great. They played out where the Clippers played on Franklin County Stadium, or Cooper Stadium as it was known later. But other than that, there was a professional softball league, the Columbus All-Americans, a guy named Norm Cash, if you remember, from the Detroit Tigers.
Certainly, yes. Absolutely. That is absolutely something we want to go into at some point in another episode, that league, for sure, for a lot of reasons.
So, there were a lot of failed franchises, a couple other basketball teams, the Columbus Minks, and there were some soccer teams that failed as well, some football teams, pro football teams that failed. So,
was the Ohio Glory of the World League of American Football, weren't they Columbus-based too?
Yes, that was, what was that, like 93, 94, David?
Correct. So that was just around this time.
Yeah.
Got it. This was certainly before. Okay, got it. But okay, well, that so I didn't mean to interrupt, but that leads me kind of maybe, and maybe, David, you could sort of underline here. Sure. So as you're circling around potential places to relocate or flag plant on behalf of Horn Chen, which I want to get to the part of that story in a second, it seems to me, and Craig is sort of hinting at it, that Columbus is really kind of, proving its worth, I guess, demographically and psychographically and geographically, for some fertile and now much more, shall we say, robust pro sports stuff, right? I made the allusion to the World League of American Football, but, in the background is this soon to domicile Major League Soccer in 96 too. So it seems to me like you were kind of maybe starting to sort of circle around this metropolitan area that wasn't necessarily, you weren't the only ones maybe thinking about this market.
No, exactly right. But they all had failed, So when you look at it, it was still a calculated risk because you look at 3 hockey teams that had come and gone, and many others. Nobody had really broken through. So the city, you could tell, there was something there, but the folks were having a tough time figuring out how to tap into it and sustain it. And so we knew, it was not lost on us that we could come in and be the next failure. It was certainly a very strong possibility, and we were motivated very much early on by fear of failure, and we rolled up our sleeves and worked pretty hard and tried to find our angles to get to the people that could help us, promote the team. And once we, found a few of those formulas working, we just caught fire a bit, but there was no guarantee it was going to fly.
Tell me about this. Tell me about this Horn Chen guy. who ironically lived in a town literally just next door to me where I live in the northern suburbs of Chicago. But not only him, but what was his background in all of this, as well as perhaps you can sort of end with this, is why were you looking at Cleveland in the first place? And why wouldn't that also bring agita, given Cleveland's checkered history of hockey, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Horn, just quick background on him, Chicago businessman, was the second biggest importer of bamboo in the United States. Had a downtown office building in Chicago on the Miracle Mile there, and had a number of Chinese restaurants in Chicago, as well as Slugger Sports Bar, which there's several locations for that, but the main one is right across from Wrigley Field. So, it's one of the institutions for, Cub baseball fans. His son, Chris, played hockey, and they went down to, he kind of traveled for that, and went down to Indianapolis, and that's what got him initially interested. And he got himself involved in the purchase of what became the Indianapolis Ice. And I was part of that start there as well. And Horn we had success there, and he started to get into the minor league sports purchasing. In fact, he thought the wave, he saw something, because he thought the wave for minor league hockey was coming for whatever reason. And he thought it was a good investment. And he loved hockey, he loved sports. He was a Blackhawks season seat holder and Cubs season seat holder. And, I got to use the seventh row seats of the Cubs a few times. That was kind of nice. And, but really a businessman first, more than anything.
And why Cleveland?
Oh, Cleveland. Yeah. Well, that was kind of set initially when Horn offered me the opportunity. That was the designation. It was, we're going to go to Cleveland. Cleveland, obviously a really good hockey city as well. But we went, and it was pretty evident quickly that his thought was we were going to go to the Cleveland State University new arena, which was just being built at the time. Only missing kind of a key ingredient. It didn't have ice, and also they didn't have a GM at the time, we were moving on a tight, fast time frame. So to have both of those things kind of fall together and kind of work through the politics that are involved in the collegiate scene, which is a lot slower than the rest of the world, there was just not enough time, and we had no deal, and there was no way we were going down to gun. It was just going to be priced way out of what we could do. So he said, start looking at options. So we did, and I ended up recommending Columbus.
That's interesting. I suspect that the Cleveland Crunch of the then fledgling NPSL indoor soccer was also part of the mix there at the CSU.
Yeah, I recall that they were, and I think that was pretty popular in Cleveland at that point in time.
Interesting. So Craig, give me a sense then of when did you do you remember when you saw this ad in the Hockey News or this piece in the Hockey News that hinted or more than that this club was coming your way?
Yeah, I think it was probably either April or early May of 91. And again, saw that blurb and made a few phone calls. Somehow, I don't know exactly how David and I connected, but I think our first meeting was that he was in town searching out sites and locations for office and everything. I think we met at a hotel up in northern Columbus and clandestine operation there. And we met each other for the first time, and he discussed what was going on and what his plans were. So I would say that was in maybe late May or early June at that point, that you could tell that he had something going on, that there was going to be hockey pretty soon in Columbus again.
Yeah, and I had this. Craig kind of kept his skeptical eye through the whole conversation, but he did listen. I think he started to think something might have an opportunity. I think we had at least a framework of a plan.
So what was the beginnings of the plan, right? So aside from all the things that any hockey team needs, which is players, coaches, facility, there's also marketing and breaking through and introducing to the marketplace what this entity, these players, the zeitgeist is going to be. Sort of walk us through this, because it quickly became a phenomenon, and obviously it wasn't by accident, was it?
Right. Well, I think a lot of different things. And first of all, it was I had just three of us to start with: myself, Alan Karpick, who was my right hand, and Larry Lane, who interned with me in Indianapolis. We were first on board, and we started to kind of investigate the city. And I put these guys on different assignments. And one of the things we wanted to do was kind of see who could be sponsors out there. We went and looked at who was sponsoring Ohio State and the Clippers and other things in town. So we spent some time on those sort of issues. We started to develop our, brand look and the name and what the uniform is going to look like. The hiring the coach, getting the right kind of right person there, which we did, I think, with Terry Ruskowski. And then how were we going to go about, putting this together and promoting it. And we always knew, because this comes a little out of the Beck tradition. And again, Ray Compton, who was a mentor for me in Indianapolis, promoting, constantly promoting, constantly telling the story, tying that bit back to the sales side with, tickets and so on. And, we wanted to intrigue people. We wanted to make sure that our event would be fun, and we wanted to make a bit of a splash the best we could. And, so we started to pull those things together, those ideas. We had run that drill in Indianapolis to a degree. I had spent 6 years prior to my time with the Ice with the Pacers. So we had, background in both PR and marketing. So it was time for us to, give one a try here. And so we started to roll that out. We ended up stepping it up a notch and went a little stronger on the advertising and promotion than we thought we would initially. And again, that was born out of fear of failure at the time, and triggered by, and Craig can speak to this, the Robert Smith incident of him leaving the Ohio State football team right in the middle of camp, and that's the stir that caused. That's one of the things that got me very nervous that we would ever be seen. Right, Craig?
Yeah, and that was Robert Smith, star running back for Ohio State, decided he wasn't going to play football that year because Ohio State wasn't stressing academics, and he had personal conflicts with one of the coaches. So, that's the lead story on the news, not the lead sports story. That's the lead story on the news for days and days at the 6 o'clock news and in the newspaper. And David's right. He probably was wondering, how can we break through this? Ohio State is so dominant in the area, especially Ohio State football. We've got to do something radical, being the chill. And so that's where they went into a different direction.
Yeah, so we were doomed otherwise, I think. I really do. So we had worked with an agency in Indianapolis, and I had the same folks kind of helping us out a bit, trying to get the brand and all that together. And I went back to our guy that I'd worked with for a couple of years, and I said, listen, we need to hit people between the eyes here, because if we don't do that, it's going to be game over. We cannot. We have to have great first impression. We've got to come out. We've got to find that audience that will gravitate to this. And he did. He came back to me with some headlines later. They were very edgy. I said, and these were for print ads initially, but the radio and things would follow that too. And I said, Mark, I said those are fantastic, but I'm cringing. You're making me nervous. I said, why don't we? I like the idea, but we got to make sure that in the subtext that people understand that this is a bit of a joke, okay, and that that we're kidding, and that we're actually poking fun at the stereotypes that people that don't know the game have of the game. So that's the direction we took.
Let's go, chill! Clear it out, clear it! Who's out those high stickers, Rock? Come on, Kilo! Shoot it! Shoot it! Skate! Skate!
The Columbus Chill scream till your brain hurts.
You're basically marketing, if you will, not only a new team in a new league, but frankly, the sport, if you will, that's been largely absent from the Columbus marketplace. And so it's kind of like a double, almost triple whammy when it comes to marketing, right? So in some respects, it's probably the hardest challenge you could ever have, because you have to create awareness for your brand, the product, and just the newness of all of it to break through. But also, maybe arguably, the converse is true. you kind of, I mean, you did, but you kind of, from a marketing perspective, didn't have anything to lose because you had nothing really to compare it against. And arguably, when it came to sports, there's really nothing in the wintertime aside maybe for some, indoor OSU games of sorts, right? You really kind of had the professional, if you will, sports realm all to yourselves.
Yeah, I think it definitely was a moment of nothing to lose. So again, we kind of went for broke with it. But we also knew it was all really strategic as well, because we weren't just going to roll out and do the in-your-face push to the larger market. One, we couldn't afford to buy ads in that kind of level. So we did more of what more of a grassroots approach, and we selected specific media we thought would be very, very friendly to this. Radio morning shows, certain alternative newspapers. The Ohio State newspapers at the time was printing like 35,000 copies a daily. It was like the fourth biggest daily in the state. And so we were doing those things very much like a groundswell you would get with social media today, But so it was almost, those groups who were really appealing to the consumer more than even the hockey fan in their 20s and maybe early to mid 30s. People that were going out having fun on a Thursday or Friday night, hitting the bar scene, whatever. That's the crowd we were going for, plus the student body at Ohio State. And we got the Ohio State, students who I think many times we were told many times you can't get them. They don't respond to anything. They came out in droves, and that really did a ton for us. We probably averaged somewhere between 750 and 1,000 a night from the colleges, not just Ohio State, but primarily Ohio State. And that just put electricity in the building that was, again, part of making who we were.
Is some of that also the changing maybe demographics of the city as well? Because it's clear, too, that around that time, you're sort of just starting to see the city becoming more of a center for corporate, entities as well, right? And young professionals, I guess.
Well, that's what we saw from the outside, but Craig can speak to that even better. But I saw average age of community. I saw young. I saw some affluent, and I thought this, why isn't anybody here again? I go back. This compares very similarly to Indianapolis. Only you're dropping in Ohio State. I saw it of a school right in the middle of the city. This, if you have the right set of circumstances, this is going to work.
Yeah, Columbus was growing and having more entertainment options, amphitheaters, concert halls, things like that were being built. And so there was a reason for people who graduated from Ohio State or the other colleges to stay in Columbus, which gave you a much younger, demographic. And so I think the Chill was able to tap in that. The other thing, Tim, is, I grew up being a hockey fan since I was 10 years old or so. And so I hate to say this, but the big thing for hockey back in those days was the fights, the rough, tough, and tumble. It's nothing like it is today. But, the Chill played into that stereotype, but they also had a pretty mean team on the ice. And that's really how a lot of the minor league teams, especially down south, get that NASCAR on ice was the slogan for a lot of those franchises early on. And the Chill was able to tap into that as well.
Some of it was backed into. I'm not sure we just went out to design a team with 9 fighters in it initially, but we got started so late. It's kind of what we ended up being. And certainly that played right into the stereotype and right into the headlines that were written. And again, the hardcore fans that had been around hockey that were still around loved it. And I think college students just, it's just action. It was cool, and so it was a good formula.
Well, all right. So how much of your initial splash and launch into the market was sort of this ECHL kind of brand of hockey, right, which is pretty rough and tumble, and how much of it was your own unique spin on things, either specific to the market or the demographics, or frankly, just the creativity that you, because I mean, you came out like gangbusters. I mean, you guys sold out like, dozens of games in a row. And like, I'm just really curious. It's just like what specifically was driving these young adults, if you will, into the barn.
Yeah, I think curiosity first. I mean, I'll date all the way back to the initial press conference. That's one of the things that Larry Allen and I worked on pretty heavily. I said, we're going to invite the whole town to the press conference. We're just not going to have a small announcement. So we ended up doing it. Craig will help me out on where.
Damon's Clubhouse.
Damon's Clubhouse. Okay, so a restaurant, 2 o'clock. Yeah, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, where it would normally be empty. And we invited agency people, we invited everybody in the media, potential sponsors, all of those folks, and we packed the room. There were probably 150 people at a minimum in that room for that initial press conference. So the first impression, I think every media camera and every media reporter that was there was like, oh my God, what is going on here? We had no idea this was, what we better pay a little bit more of attention, which they did for about 10 minutes. And then they went back to Ohio State, and then we had to keep hammering away. We had to keep coming back and hammering away in different ways. But it was that, it was a little bit of that edge, that really worked for us. And it was an attitude. It was fun. And we were going to, have something that was going to be a little bit different. Again, I go back to the Beck style. We're going to, you're there for the show as much as you are the game. And I think that, and the East Coast League, was going well. Hockey was on an upswing. Columbus was changing. So I just think it all kind of came together. Timing is a lot of it.
How about the game experience? And the uniforms? I've seen some of the old uniforms. I mean, you guys looked like you took a few chances and then some on specific unique day of game situations, as well as just the overall, regular jersey sort of setup.
Yeah, it took us the second year to get into the jersey referencing because, that with the lead time on creating what we did, we ended up picking up, I think, the LA Kings in black and silver at the time. And we did the same in Indianapolis. So we're just kind of carrying that over. But we, again, in that idea of trying to look different, we went back to the agency and said, give us something that is unique. And our folks came back with that essentially icicle look that kind of runs kind of at an angle. And I said, that's nobody's got that. So that became, again, a big part of what our brand became. And again, that fed right into that unique and different kind of thinking.
Well, you forgot the chill running from the bottom up on the side, David.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, sorry. That's why we do these interviews together, Craig.
Well, Craig, what was your sort of sense of you're covering this team, right? So, how did you become less jaded, I guess, and when did you sort of maybe, I don't know, convert, I guess, not to say be a fan per se, but that this was going to be something of significance and stick around and stuff, because clearly if fans are coming out, their buzz is out there, right? You're going to get more chances to cover this team. And, there's probably more of a sensation than maybe even you were thinking of.
Yeah, it was. And, I grew up in Columbus. I'd been to the Seals and Owls games, never was old enough to get to a Checkers game. So when the Owls left in '77, I was a senior in high school. And and I was thinking about going into journalism. And one of the things I remembered saying to myself was, if I have a chance to help the hockey team or save hockey in Columbus or do something for hockey in Columbus, I would love to do it. Now, that doesn't mean being blind to it. You got to be a journalist, and you've got to be able to be unbiased about what you're covering. But I was rooting for the Chill to make it, to be honest, because it was good for Columbus. I thought it would be a good thing for the city to have. So early on, I put as much as I could into covering the team as well as I could. I took vacation time to go over to Indianapolis for the training camp, so the Dispatch wouldn't have to pay for it. First season, I also took some vacation time and went on the road with the team to cover them because the team was building up the interest. Like you said, the sellout streak was starting. Amazing coverage they were getting, and so I was able to do that. When did I really think they had made it? I don't know. Probably maybe when they were featured in the Wall Street Journal, just 2 months after the first home game on December 31st, 1991. And there was a big story in the Wall Street Journal about the Chill and the success they were having. I think that opened up my eyes and everybody's eyes. Hey, this is something different.
Yeah, and that got followed by ABC World News came in like 2 weeks after that story. And they did like a 4-minute feature on a World News Sunday. And that was that undertone of credibility, again, that went through the market. And trust me, we took that videotape and that clip around to everybody we saw in town every time we went on a sales pitch talking about sponsorships or talking about the sport in the media. We play that over and over again. And when you see Ray Gandalf introducing your, a 4-minute minor league segment at the end of a Sunday night national broadcast, it makes a statement.
Okay, what's this? Yes, the new book by Diane Shaw. I am happy and ecstatic to recommend it. It's called A Farewell to Arms, Legs, and Jockstraps. Who is Diane Shaw, you may ask, and what's it about? Well, Diane Shaw is a writer of mystery novels and biographies and other great works. But before that, you may have known her in the 1960s and 1970s as the pioneering female sports journalist that kind of broke through the barriers, the glass ceilings, if you will, becoming really the first major national newspaper sports columnist who happened to be female at the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, for that matter. And her book is just chock full of great anecdotes. It's a memoir of all of her trials and travails, shall we say, in trying to cover sports in this country as a woman. Back in the 60s and 70s, you young whippersnappers, you have no idea how challenging it was. And there's a whole generation and then some of female sports reporters and columnists and writers and on-air personalities who can owe their careers to the doors that she just plowed through back in the day. And some great stories and some great anecdotes. And one that we especially love features a certain United States president and some interesting times when he was running a team and then trying to bulldoze his way through the old USFL, the New Jersey Generals in particular. I'm not going to repeat the story here. It's well worth the price of admission in this book alone. And we highly encourage you to check it out wherever fine books are found. It's called A Farewell to Arms, Legs, and Jockstraps. It is published by the Indiana University Press and their imprint Red Lightning Books. And we thank both of them for offering our listeners an exclusive free chapter download right now. All you have to do is visit this little website. And I'll repeat it again because it's a little clunky. And you're going to get a free special sneak peek, free chapter of the book, A Farewell to Arms, Legs, and Jockstraps. Just go to this website, iupress.org/jockstraps-good seats. That's iupress.org. It's the letter U, press, iupress.org/jockstraps, one word, -good seats, one word. And again, you're going to get a free special sneak peek, a free chapter download of the brand new book by Diane Shaw, A Farewell to Arms, Legs, and Jockstraps. If you don't remember that URL, we'll have a link to it on our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com off of this episode. And you will enjoy this book. I guarantee it. And I appreciate our new friends at Red Lightning Books and Indiana University Press, hard to say, for their sponsorship and bringing our attention to this great book by Diane Shaw. He says, A Farewell to Arms, Legs, and Jockstraps. I know you'll enjoy the free sample, and I know you'll enjoy the book. Try it out, and as they say, you'll be glad you did. All right, back to our conversation. Here it comes. What was it that was drawing that national attention? I mean, for example, I've got to think, if you remember, I'm sure you probably vividly remember some of the more incredible sort of in-game activities, like, do I have this right? The frozen chickens during the first game?
Yes.
Does that ring a bell? What? Tell our audience what that was all about and what that was.
It was a contest to shoot frozen Cornish game hens, actually, to win fabulous prizes. We had a $5,000 cash prize, which is another thing, again, you don't even do that today. And we offered $5,000 in cash. So we did that. We built a whole radio ad around it. And again, it was all about tone setting and saying there's going to be more to this than hockey. There's going to be, you're going to see a show, and this is going to be different. And so that one people remember. It just kind of stuck as something being a little bit different.
So were you marketing these games essentially as you never know what's going to happen. I mean, oh yeah, by the way, there'll be some hockey, but more of just sounds like zany fun.
Yes.
Under the roof of the old barn, and maybe some quality hockey will sort of result in the meantime.
Yeah, I think we figured hockey fans were going to be there. Whatever base of hockey fans, they were going to come because it was a good product, and it only improved as the years went on. I mean, it really was, and we had really good coaches. We had some people emerge out of that ended up being NHL players, and a lot of people doing really well in the game outside of that. But no, we were selling a show. It was a sideshow circus act, to be honest with you, in a lot of ways.
He has 4 massive bodyguards, and every night he must run the gauntlet. When he appears, 6,000 screaming fans rise to their feet. Their fates rest on the strength of his right arm. He's the Pizza Man. And he don't do anchovies. The Columbus Chill. You gotta be there.
Once we got that going, it was almost like we had this small team of people, and we were all in relatively the same age range. So we would, we would literally, have an idea and kick it around. Sometimes that was post game over beers at a place called Roosters in German Village, and we just have fun, laugh, and then say, okay, why don't we actually do that? And the next thing it was drawn up on the board, and we'd be shooting frozen chickens or whatever else, whatever the creation of the day was.
It's really, I remember that group that David talked about, his staff, they were big David Letterman fans. And so his zany, irreverent approach was probably one of the guiding forces for the entire Chill front office.
Yeah, I am from Indiana, so you had to love David Letterman. So I was just kind of, required that, and the Vec reading again. I made everybody read Vec as in Rec. So it just, again, everything was, people were on the same page, and they also matched the audience. Our staff was like ages 22 right out of college up to 31 in that first year. That was our office. Our office staff really mirrored and could really relate to what was going on, including what was going on things like the music scene. We had, at the time, we really had that Seattle grunge scene starting to break loose, and we were right on the front of all that, and throwing all that stuff into our game presentation. And that, again, that resonated huge with the college fans and the audience we were looking for.
Were you guys surprised at how quickly your target audience took to the team and buying tickets for the games and selling out, 5,600 seats at the Fairgrounds Expo Coliseum? Did you think it was going to take a little longer? And it feels to me like, and if national media was sort of on your case already 2 months after launch, I got to think that was ahead of schedule.
Yeah, everything was ahead of schedule. No, I'm not kidding when I say in August, when this Robert Smith leaving the football team story broke, I'm distraught. There's no way we're going to break through, and so yes, everything was ahead of schedule, and you have to have some luck and a little bit of fluke. And that Wall Street Journal story actually came because they were scouring different things around the country and came across something Craig wrote, right, Craig?
Yeah. And, they interviewed me for it. My highlight of my entire career was being called Mr. Merz in the Wall Street Journal. So yeah, it's been all downhill since then.
But they were looking for something different. Apparently of that day they were looking for something a little bit different, and they found that, and then decided to write about it. And that hits the Wall Street Journal. That was a big deal. Yeah, but it didn't end there. It just kind of kept going on and on. Again, national play, and then all of a sudden, it was the talk of the town. And fun. Just always had a great impression. We had our guys constantly in the morning radio shows, and they became practically part of the morning show routine at the morning zoo. They were just an extension of it. We'd have them in there basically every homestand and giggling it up with the morning show host, and they became beloved. I mean, I think the fans really took to this team too. I mean, it was not they loved these guys, and they were 2 steps below, right? And I'm not sure we had anybody off of those early teams that went a lot farther than that. But they worked hard. They were out there for real, But they ate up the fan experience, and Columbus. Columbus was a sports town to be had. It just was. It just, just nobody had really kind of figured out how. Other than the Clippers, the Clippers were successful for forever, but they filled that nice summer niche between seasons. But so many others kind of came and went, and but the appetite was there. It was there. You just had to figure out a way to unlock it.
And Tim, I think a key point has to be made about that national attention so quickly. For our young listeners to your podcast, there was no social media. I mean, to have that within 2 months was remarkable, because there was no instant put it on, the Cornish hens. That would have been on Twitter within 20 seconds and seen thousands of views. It would have been on SportsCenter immediately that night as one of the top 10 plays probably, or something. There was no social media, no Facebook, anything at that point. It was all word of mouth, or my articles, other people's articles, TV stations, and that word just spread nationally, just like that. But the other thing was, there was unbelievable timing, and David can address this. For the second Friday night, the first Friday night was the first home game on November 1st, sellout. The next Friday night, David can go into how Magic Johnson played into this entire thing.
Yeah, we had tried to set up, we had 5 Friday nights in that November, because we landed on the 1st, was the first November date. And we wanted to come up with a big promotion. So we did, the Laker girls, bring the Laker girls in. I was able to figure out how to get that to happen. And they hadn't done national appearances at that time. So we got them in. And the day before, I'm literally on my way to the airport, just about to leave to go pick up 2. We got 2 in early for PR's sake, and then the rest of the team would come on the Friday and then be part of the event. And that was the afternoon that Magic Johnson announced that he had HIV. So I had Brent, our PR person, all week begging the media to do something with these 2 girls that we brought in early. Just get any camera time we could to advance the game to help us. Was an opening night sellout. That's one thing, but to kind of get that momentum going, you need to come right back. Well, that story went, so huge instantly, obviously, across the world, that, the girls that we couldn't get, them to take, now they had half them. And I talked to them, I picked them up myself, and we'd heard, the announcement had just happened. I said, do you want to, do any appearances tonight, or, you need to kind of regroup, not really having known what happened. So they said, that we don't want to. And I said, that's fine. We'll just pick up tomorrow's appearances. And we had, again, just an onslaught of the media. Is it Bob Orr, Craig?
Yeah, Bob Orr.
Yeah, he was the one that was pestering Brent the most. And but they all wanted it. And we wouldn't give it to them. So it's again, now all of a sudden we had that feeling like, okay, we're at the hot club and you can't get in, And even though it was obviously a terribly tragic story at that moment, and everybody assumed the worst, obviously that Magic Johnson continued on just fine, but at the time that certainly was just frightening for everyone. But that, again, that drew more attention to the team. And we just had, kind of one thing after another like that going on early on. So we had kind of built in PR for whatever reason. And, again, a little bit of timing, a little bit of luck, or whatever you want to call it. And then the crowds, came. We played 5 Friday nights, and we sold all 5 Friday nights out in November, and we won all 5 games. And I think we were maybe like 5-10, but we won the games that mattered. And so again, everything kind of affects everything else, and that was a great way to get started, even though it was very, very stressful and crazy.
It sounds to me like the Fairgrounds arena the Coliseum, I don't know what the official title was, but the Fairgrounds, the facility, right, was in some respects the best of situations, given it was relatively small in terms of number of seats. It was, to your point, almost capacity controlled or constrained to make it sort of hard, maybe, or a tough ticket to get, especially you were starting off so hot, but also, as maybe you want to maybe allude to, kind of the worst of situations. Number one being it's arguably, I guess maybe it was even at the time, the literally oldest building to house a professional indoor sports franchise of sorts. But there was also some drama in your second season regarding the facility too, right?
Even in the first game. In fact, the chill beat writer for the paper was holding the front page because the first game was almost a disaster. And
yes, I was.
We weren't set up for ice, and we were not. We were using a portable system of piping matched with an old system that had been fired up for years, and we almost didn't play. It's actually one of the great chapters in the book because you read it and you say that is how not to go about it. But we ended up managing to hold it together and pulled off the game, and the sellout crowd and people climbing on this flimsy glass at the end of the night to high five players. It was an incredible picture. But Craig can look at it from the other point of view because obviously he was seeing as he said, I'm kind of pulling for this thing to happen. I'm going to write a front page story how it couldn't even get off the ground.
It would have been better if it was a disaster. But David, congratulations, you survived the night. but Tim, anyway, yeah, you talked about the Coliseum. They had to play 4 home games that first season on the road just because of scheduling with the CBA team at the time for that one season, and then high school basketball tournament. And then over the summer, David can talk more about it, but the Chill basically lost a ton of home dates because of a scheduling snafu that really was the impetus to start an Arena Sports Commission, which eventually led to the Columbus Blue Jackets in the NHL.
Well, yeah. So before you get there, what were the acute snafus that were, especially in your second season, that were like, was it you didn't get the dates early enough? Were there preclusions or?
Yeah, well, no, we had the dates. We did not get good dates. We went back to the Fairgrounds and said, we just have to do better than this. And their fair manager at the time, I'm going to let Craig talk all about him. We made a deal, and then that deal got backed out on. He got kind of ousted, and all of a sudden they had 3 events scheduled in 2 buildings over the same time period, and we were going to be out. And we spun that. We took that and made that from, again, what would have been a complete disaster. And I don't know how we would have, if we had to take all of February and March off our home schedule, I don't know, we couldn't be going around the state like that all the time. Just wouldn't work. But we turned that because we had the fans on our side, and we took it, and we were, again, very deliberate, very calculated, and not something I would have done before or since, but we were going to hold our fire, and we knew this guy was going to go up in flames. And when he did, we were going to pound the media with it and turn our fan base loose on him. And that's what got the entire conversation started. But I'll let Craig fill in the rest.
Oh, well, Billy Inman was the fair manager at the time, and he was famous for saying that the state fair was the largest in the country, with 3 million visitors. When you do an audit, it's really, 900,000 or so. That sort of told you where his head was at the time. And so he had once held a hunger strike when he was running for governor of the state of Ohio. And basically, he was a piece of work, to put it mildly.
Yeah, but he was he was kind of falling apart in front of people's eyes as far as he thought he might be ousted. And again, we kind of saw that coming. We got a letter together, basically, which I didn't reveal to anybody besides Alan, Larry, Lane, and myself knew what we were doing until we put it in the book. But we asked the league for help Pat Kelly. He says, "How can I help?" He says, "Well, I need you to write a letter threatening our franchise, and then we're going to get that out to the media." Okay, and so he says, "Okay, what do I write?" And I says, "Don't worry, we'll write it for you." So we wrote him a letter, and he sent it out. We waited for him in the fall, and we put that information out there. At the same moment, even before that, the night before, we dropped out letters to every one of our season seat holders saying, "This is what you need to do. Call every media outlet, call the paper, call the TV stations if you want hockey to stay here."
And was the horizon of the CBA sort of experiencing the same thing, or was it sort of a different vibe?
Yeah, they moved on between the first and the second to that downtown location we talked about.
Right.
Yeah, so they had really, I think even in that, somewhere in that first season, they already made that decision to move downtown.
Got it. Well, that seems like that your back is against the wall for whatever crazy and odd reasons, right? It almost became your defining moment, right? To almost guaranteeing you some level of longer term success, given the fans that you could rally your cause.
What it did, yeah, I mean, we won the battle, but it linked in so many people on the political side that mattered. We had the mayor called me, Mayor Lashutka called me like right away and said, "What can I do to help?" And we talked, and he was helpful in brokering, but brokering, it was the Columbus Dispatch Boat and Travel Show, which was a huge event. And then a kind of a regional gymnastics competition of some sort that had to make adjustments, and it got done. But Craig can tell you the rest too. I mean, what sprung from that was almost instant in terms of, besides getting the problem solved. We had the mayor on our side, and he came out. What was it, Craig? 6 days?
Yeah, about 6 days.
6 days after we kind of launched it, he says, we need to do something about facilities in this town. And Greg, you want to add to that?
Oh yeah, and then that's where Mayor Lashutka got together with some of the civic folks and decided to have a task force, a sports arena task force, and try to decide why a city the size of Columbus, a growing city, did not have a nice downtown arena, sports arena. And from there, again, like David said, everybody in the city came together, community and civic leaders, business leaders, even the high state at that point was fairly friendly at that point. So they came together, and that's really the genesis for what followed for Columbus and the Chill.
Yeah, and it involved, we had a couple of the eventual NHL Jackets minority owners in it, involved in that, and John Wolf, who was the owner of the Dispatch Media Group, Ron Pizzuti, who was a big-time developer in town. He was a champion of it too. But it started there with that moment. That's what really galvanized the idea of getting a downtown arena. Not so much the NHL just yet, but the downtown arena, and that kept evolving. There were different, and we were involved in every step, because after the task force, which is really the committee to study if we need a committee, there was a study by the Chamber of Commerce that said, if we do a downtown arena and we have the Chill as a tenant, we can be successful. And the mayor stood up and talked about that too. And then from there, it was actually, now we're going to get into how we go about funding it. There was a 10-person task force, multi-arena task force, I think was the name of it, Downtown Arena Commission, essentially. And we had 2 people from the chamber, 2 people from the city, 2 people from Convention Visitors Bureau, 2 from the county, because they were all potential funding mechanisms. And then there were 2 private people, Doug Kryler, who ran CAPA, which is the Performing Arts, and then myself. So we were on that, and that's what led to issue 1. We met for, I don't know, it was close to a year, and then came out with a plan of this is how you go fund it, which became a short-term sales tax, short-term tax initiative for about 3 years. And if we got that done, we'd be able to build both an arena and next to it a downtown soccer stadium for the new Columbus Crew. And so that is where these are all the evolutions. Then I'm throwing a lot that happened over a 5-6 year time period before we actually got to a vote, which failed. But that opened the door to, by then, the city leaders that were involved were all invested. They wanted it to happen. And Gary Bettman wanted Columbus to happen. So we were given an extra 6 weeks to figure it out. Even though there were 11 applications and they pretty much had the other 3, they held the door for us in Columbus. And we were fortunate. Again, that's a whole other story in itself. In that, Lamar Hunt was involved initially as the lead owner. Once it became, not the city-owned arena, it was going to be much higher cost with the private. He opted out, he was given a short period of time to make a decision, and then when he didn't, John McConnell, one of the great city founders, stepped in, and he's okay. I will buy the team. I will make it happen. And then again, Ron Pizzuti, John Wolf, they were also had investment in it. So again, that group that was kind of in there at the beginning of that issue that we were talking about with Ron Pizzuti and John Wolf, they end up being very much involved in the Jackets, in ownership.
But it's interesting. It's interesting too because obviously Lamar Hunt sort of followed through, at least on the soccer side, later in the decade, right? I was at that. Actually, was at that very first game back in the day.
Oh, so was I.
And I'm sure I saw you waving across the field with Michael Buffer introducing the players at that game. But it's also you're kind of maybe hearkening to, which is 20 some odd years ago, which is eons, I guess, in the landscape of arena building, right? And that juxtaposed against public use and taxes and governments and stuff. We spent a ton of time in this show getting into one of these very important areas, which is sort of this, let's call it civic pride stuff, right? You go to the Indianapolis Pacers and the Market Square Arena, and that is sort of or the Hartford Whalers story, right? All those, these are, and it almost harkens back to a time which frankly seems quaint when you look at it, the cynical lens of today, right? Where, hey, this could be a defining moment for us as a city, as a metropolitan area to step up, if you will, become truly major league. I think it's interesting and almost ironic, right? That in many respects, a minor league hockey franchise, successful and outlandishly so, would have been perceived as the impetus, the leverage, the root of this, right? But it speaks, frankly, to you arguably punching above your weight in that regard, or tapping into the zeitgeist of a city on the rise.
I'd say it's both. Again, it was it was timing, it was fortune, it was these things falling together, being part of this process along the way. But there were a lot of people that we went through that commission. They were, we had all points of contact in the city involved in that. And then we had, kind of these glue sort of folks with John Christie, who used to run the chamber, but he ended up being a owner's representative for Mr. McConnell. And we had a relationship, he and another chamber member named Kathy Maney Little, and they were kind of the glue to these other folks, kind of between us and the political, and they kind of knew that we were this kind of hot entity, and that we were out to try to see how far we could take it. It was kind of like a fun experiment in a lot of ways, but as a sports marketer, East Coast Hockey League is a terrific product, but my gosh, we have a chance to really change and turn a city, or be a part of that, whatever percentage of credit or involvement you give the Chill. At the end of the day, we were certainly a big part of it, especially early on, but we couldn't get it to the finish line. There's no way. That was, at the end of the day, going to be up to the city and the titans of the city that could afford to make it happen.
Well, let's get to the denouement, I guess, of the story, right? So it feels to me an amazing albeit relatively brief, run of success and outlandish marketing and becoming the thing for the younger audiences out there in Columbus, and by the end of your term there, right? Some championship caliber hockey being played. Don't forget. I guess though it feels to me like there's also maybe a bittersweetness to some of this, because my perception is that you did a hell of a lot of the legwork and then some to, if you will, maybe set the table for, dare I say, others to walk through your front door and take the mantle of big-time NHL-ness plus an arena. Or do you not see it that way?
Well, no. I mean, it's you're either all in or you're not. And I talked to our owner about it as the Horn. You know, this is something that we're going to either go for it or we're not, and be part of it. And we were rewarded on it. You know, Horn ended up having, you know, we cut a deal. He got a couple % of the Jackets, you know, so that ended up being a pretty big reward for him. You know, I ended up joining the franchise, was with the Jackets in the VP capacity for 10 years. So, you know, to me, that was a continuation, you know, of the story, which still goes on today, you know, and we built the ice rinks and other things too to kind of help, you know, really grow the game in the long term. So, you know, it's collaboration, and it's never any one thing. Again, there were a lot of people. And again, I mentioned some of the key ones here, be it the connectors or be it the power brokers. They were, you know, it doesn't happen without them. The mayor, you know, it was. But yeah, I mean, again, if we don't go back to that the scheduling issue that we had between year 1 and 2, or the success and what had gravitated, you know, that kind of wave of just unbelievable positive publicity that got people interested in the sport. And then that arena, the Coliseum scheduling issue, if it doesn't happen, nothing does. I mean, if we go to Cleveland, it obviously doesn't happen. If we fall on our face, it doesn't happen. It needed that to kind of get it going. And, you know, again, you know, it's rewarding as anything, you know, at the end of the day, to have seen it happen.
And again, it goes back to timing as well. You know, the chill came along in '91. The NHL was expanding, but, you know, they added 4 teams in 1997. If they would decide to add 4 teams in 1994, the chill, Columbus, would not have been ready for it. There's just no way they would have been able to get it done by then. But
that's it.
Perfect timing for it to happen for Columbus. And, you know, from 91 to 97, those 6-year period, Columbus positioned itself well to get an NHL franchise.
And if we'd been 6 months to a year later with any phase of that, even, you know, the chamber plan was not, you know, yeah, it'd be great if we get the NHL, but we can do this without the NHL. We can do this with the chill. If that doesn't get to the next phase and we go to the vote, and the conversation about the vote was a 2-year just constant dialogue in town. So it wasn't like that people went to the ballots. They didn't like the tax issue, so they voted it down. But it wasn't like they weren't for the idea, you know, and of the idea of having something new, something, you know, downtown. And keep in mind, as vibrant as Columbus was all the way around, downtown was not. Downtown was kind of dead at 5 o'clock. Correct, Craig? Was that my
Well, yeah. The arena is built around the side of the Ohio State Penitentiary, which had been closed for years and was crumbling. I used to go running downtown when I lived nearby, and the sidewalks were filled with crumbling bricks and mortar from the penitentiary that had no upkeep on it for years. So yeah, that whole side downtown was a giant, vast wasteland. Until the arena was built.
Yeah, and then you have to think again. We haven't even mentioned Nationwide. We haven't mentioned people like Bob Woodward because, again, you know, it's Nationwide Insurance, Nationwide Realty that ended up picking it up once the boat went down. Like, yeah, Mr. McConnell will step up and buy the team along with these other folks, but then we have to have an arena. And Nationwide has that property. The city the state gave it to the city, and the city more or less turned it over to Nationwide and ended up building the roads and so forth. And it's become this incredible development. And if you haven't been there and you haven't seen it, I mean, these are buildings that will be standing in 200 years. I mean, they're so solidly built, and it has completely changed the city. The arena district and sports downtown, the Jackets, all of it. And there were not people living downtown. Now there's got to be. They were hoping for 10,000. I think they're well past that. There's restaurants, bars, office space out your ears. I mean, it's just an amazingly vibrant place.
And the Clippers moved downtown a few years later, up in 2009 from West Side. They built a beautiful ballpark right next to Nationwide Arena.
Yeah, one of the best you'll probably find in minor league baseball. And then coming, right, Craig, we got something else coming right west of them, which is like within a stone's throw of both those facilities.
Yeah, you got the new $350 million soccer stadium for the Crews going to be opening up almost a year from now. So that's still part of the arena district. Finally, after 1997, tax issue failed for a soccer arena or a soccer stadium and a hockey arena. Now by 2021, they'll have both in downtown Columbus. So it's taken a while, but it's come full circle.
All right. Well, a couple of quickies to sort of close that circle. Number one, it does feel to me that this truly is underlined and punctuated with the civic, shall we say, duty and people pulling in to sort of do the right thing for the community, right? Which is, frankly, dare I say, refreshing, given the cynicism and the big money shenanigans that tend to sort of surround a lot of these arena projects and pro sports team ownership groups and all that kind of stuff.
Well, there was a phrase back in that era called public-private partnership. You don't hear that as much as you used to. And that's exactly what this was. And, you had a really good convention center there, but they were dying for something, nearby to help send people to, in the evening or whatever for events, or have additional space for their events that they wanted to do. So there was interest down there and interest in that downtown and that business community, to do things that would, create new hotels and just jumpstart it. And at the end of the day, I mean, you had that kind of civic side of it in the city leaders, and then you had somebody like John McConnell, who had been so successful in business and obviously a city icon. At the end of the day, he said, "I'm not going to let this get away. I'm gonna buy this. I'm gonna make this. Own this team. If Lamar is kind of stepping away, or is it ready to grab the baton as fast as we need? Because the NHL is not going to stand by and wait on us forever. I will." And Mr. Mack, he and the folks at Nationwide, then at building the building, they finished the deal. I tell you, and it was really phenomenal for the city. I know that the Jackets, finally starting have some real success. Had a great, obviously. A stunning playoff series. I guess was that only a year ago, because it seems long.
It seems longer, yeah.
The biggest first round upset in NHL history. Their fabric, the hockey is fabric of that community. We have the ice rinks kind of dotting it. We got those started back in the day with the Chillers. They've continued. Even now, I think Columbus is one of the cities being really seriously considered to help finish the NHL season, right?
Yeah, it's one of the 10 potential hub cities. They're going to pick 2 of them, and Columbus is one of the 10 finalists for it.
And a lot of that has to do with the infrastructure that is built. And think about that. We came in, there wasn't any infrastructure, not to speak of. I mean, I love the Coliseum. It was a great, as Greg said, barn. Fantastic, low roof, tight seats. No room in the hallways. So, but it was electric, but that was your choice. You didn't have a second choice really to look at. And the convention space downtown, that ended up giving away just a big convention room. That arena went away. Now you have 2, world-class arenas and again, the ice rinks with the Chillers and in several locations around the city. it's set up for this. And the sports commission does really well with events. A great sports commission in Columbus. Linda Logan does a fantastic job. And, Columbus is thriving. But you know what? We said at the beginning of this podcast, I guess, it was a city. It was a city to be had. It was there. It was just a matter of finding a way to break through. And that is not in any way disrespect to Ohio State. Ohio State football is still king, and basketball is huge. But the Jackets are too, and the NHL in Columbus is a very big deal.
All right. Well, here's my last question, and then I'll let you promote. What is so? It's pretty clear what the legacy of the Chill is, because it lives on in the Blue Jackets. So give me a sense, though, how much has the Blue Jackets franchise, maybe through your involvement subsequently or separately, is there any, shall we say, remembrance or deference to the Chill? Has there been a throwback game? Is there any sort of legacy remembering and or hagiography, if you will? Because, we just spent the last hour or so kind of describing, frankly, much of the foundation that was set up for that franchise came through your hard labor, no?
Dave, I'll answer that. No. And it's been disappointing. Absolutely disappointing from my perspective.
And why is that?
I don't know. Well, early on, I think Doug McClain, who was the GM and president of the team of the Blue Jackets, probably wanted to disassociate from a minor league hockey, where the NHL chills minor league. Since then, I don't know. Once they get an outdoor game or stadium series game, so I would love for them to wear some Chill jerseys as throwback, like Nashville's done with their minor league hockey team and Dallas has done with their minor league hockey team. I think it'll happen, and we have some good people in charge of the Blue Jackets now. But, if you go around the arena, there's really no remembrance of the Chill at all. It's a shame. I wish somehow there was a Columbus Hockey Hall of Fame for not just the Chill, but for the high school hockey, the high state hockey, people who developed hockey in Columbus. That'd be great. But so far, there's really been no impetus for it.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to interrupt, but I'll let you finish, David. But this is not like a Cleveland Barons for 2 years that borrowed the name from the minor league team, was 2 years, and then kaput, they went out of business. Yeah. Literally the last franchise to collapse in the NHL. This is a much more systemic rooting and foundational building of what that without the Chill, there is no Blue Jackets.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's been a little bit. It's not been completely none, but there was there was a shift. It was just a shift. In a lot of ways, it was a natural thing to, like, this is the NHL. This is going to be different. We need to make sure people understand that this is 2 more levels up and the greatest in the world. I think there could have been more done, but again, at the end of the day, it's the end result that matters the most, and that we have it. And I think it's in quick story, John Christie and I, who was the owner's representative, talked about the name, and we talked about the Chill briefly about, is that something we should carry? And he and I were on the same page at the end of the day, but he was asking it legit to see how I felt about it. I said, as much as I would love that, and I think it would be fantastic, there is a part that we do need to have. It needs to be something, else. It needs to be something bigger than East Coast, And so I was torn on that answer a little bit, because of the pride, obviously, we had in putting the team together and the success and the involvement we had. But at the same time, I put my marketing hat on again and be objective. I think in a lot of sense it made total sense to break from that, and then, okay, now thank you for what you've done, but we're moving on to the bigs.
Tim, and one thing quickly, back in the Blue Jackets' favor, back in 2012, when we had a Chill reunion, they were honored and recognized the players that came in for the Chill to the game. They were honored at Blue Jackets game. They were very gracious that night. Showed them on the video board and everything. So that was fantastic. And then just a few months ago, Eric Weltner had released a documentary on the IHL team, Checkers, Seals, and Owls, and they were also feted down at Nationwide Arena. So there is now an acknowledgement of the minor league hockey programs in Columbus, so that's great.
All right, our thanks to Craig and Dave for a tremendous chat. The Columbus Chill is a story I knew nothing about, and just saddened by the fact that I didn't know about how not only successful but groundbreaking that franchise was. And you can learn more about them and the story of the Chill in the book. It's called Chill Factor: How a Minor League Hockey Team Changed a City Forever. It is available in hardcover wherever good books are found. Of course, you can find a link to it on our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com. You'll find that convenient link to Amazon, and you can order that book that way, or you can order in a pre-order fashion through that same link or going to Amazon.com for Chill Factor, the paperback edition, which is going to be available in November. But if you want to pre-order it now and lock in your savings, and by the way, maybe give us a few shekels of love too by going through that link on our website, you can get the paperback edition coming out on November 3rd, we think, of this year. And it will include a whole bunch of updates and new information about the Columbus Chill. So you've got two excuses, if you will, to learn more about this Chill team. The hardcover edition available now, wherever books are found, or on Amazon through our link or otherwise, or that pre-ordered version of the paperback edition, the updated edition, to come in November. Either way, you're going to enjoy it to no end, and the Columbus Chill will be part of your history knowledge as well as it is now mine. We want to thank, of course, all of our great sponsors, all of our great listeners. We want to thank our pal Jerry Payne, who has put together, once again, a fantastic assemblage of assets that we have thrown his way this week, and he has produced something comprehensible and listenable. We appreciate all of his efforts. It's Jerry Payne Audio Excellence. If you want some help on your podcast or other audio goodness, we're happy to give you a high recommendation and pass you along to Jerry for more information there. If you want to follow our little show all around the web, you can do so by going, of course, to our website, goodseatsstillavailable.com. You'll find all of our episodes, our dozens and dozens and dozens of episodes. There's probably a story or a league or a team that will be a guaranteed delight for you, no matter what your persuasion or where you grew up or the sport that you're an aficionado of. Hopefully we'll be have covered something or will cover something. So by all means, bookmark that and come back and visit early and often. Please rate and review us wherever you get this podcast. That certainly helps our algorithm a little bit and helps other people like you, or maybe not even like you, to discover the show. We appreciate that wherever you can do that. That's always a good thing. You want to follow us on social media, you can do that too. On Instagram, you'll find us at Good Seats Still Available. That's all one word. On Twitter, you'll find us at Good Seats Still. You'll find us on Facebook as well. There's a page devoted to us there. You can send us email at hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. That goes straight to our little inbox. And if you want to get our little weekly email newsletter, you can do that too. There's a little link there on the website somewhere. Just send us your email address and your name, and you will get an email usually on Saturday or Sunday, which is usually a day or two before we send out our episodes each and every Monday morning. And you'll be kind of the first on your block to know that. Let's see. I think that's it. So I think we'll leave you with a little Columbus Chill audio. And I think this just speaks for itself, don't you think? All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening, and take care.
Temperatures dropping, getting cold outside. Go to the closet, pull out my high. Hit the streets looking for something to do. I want to get inside. I want to raise the roof. Chillin'. Come on, chillin'. Chillin'. Let's go chillin'. My feet take me down by the state fairgrounds. My ears get tuned through the thundering sound. People yelling, screaming in the whole Coliseum. Gotta check that out, wanna look, wanna see them. Blades are flashing, there's steel on ice. I did a double take, man, I had to look twice. Bodies are flying into the boards, they're slamming. The Columbus Chill, man, these dudes are jamming. Chillin'. Come on, chillin', chillin', let's go chillin'. I'm chillin', he's chillin', we're chillin'. Let's go chillin'. Rocco and the boys stirring up the crowd. People are yelling, fans getting loud. You wanna see some action, put the puck in the net. You think you've seen something, you ain't seen nothing yet. Chillin', come on, chillin', chillin', we're all chillin'. Blow your horn. Russian dude, Sergey says Nia ain't nothing getting through. Watch number 21, they call him the Smurf. Flying through the air, don't mess on his turf, 'cause he's